My wife cheated on me with her boss, stole $250, $0 from our joint account to fund their affair, and now she's trying to claim half of our house in a bitter divorce. How do I fight this legal nightmare? I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be a total cheat and thief. Honestly, the whole thing feels like a bad movie I can't wake up from. The most shocking part: it all unraveled in a way I never saw coming. One day I was just a regular guy married to a woman I thought I knew, and the next, I was staring at evidence that she'd been screwing her boss, Mark, and stealing $250,000 from our joint account to fund their affair. Yeah, you read that right. $250, zero gone just like that. It started small, or so I thought. Little things, you know. Lisa's been acting weird for months now, more secretive, avoiding my eyes, always on her phone. At first, I chalked it up to work stress or her trying to get that new promotion. She's a high-powered marketing executive, always busy, always pulling late nights. But then I noticed her late-night calls became more frequent, and she'd get defensive when I asked who she was talking to. She'd brush me off, say it was just work or some client, but I knew better. Something was off. One night I was going through our bank statements because I was trying to plan a surprise birthday for her. I noticed a huge withdrawal, $50, made to an account I didn't recognize. I looked closer and saw the name on the transfer, Mark Davis. My stomach sank. I knew who Mark was, her boss. He's a smooth guy, always dressed sharp with that cocky smile. I'd seen him at work functions, but I never thought he'd be involved like this. The transfer was made just 2 days before I caught her sneaking out of the house late at night. That was the moment I decided I had to dig deeper. I started tracking her phone, checking her emails, and going through her social media. It was a mess. I found texts from Mark, dirty, explicit messages, talking about how Lisa loved the way he touched her, how she couldn't wait to see him again. They'd been meeting up for months, probably even longer. She lied to me about everything. Said she was working late, that she was just stressed out, that she needed time to think. But the truth was, she was screwing her boss and stealing money to keep it going. And then I found out about the money. I checked our joint account and saw the withdrawals kept piling up. $20, zero here, $30, $0 there. I found receipts for hotels, luxury dinners, even a new designer purse she'd bought herself. All paid for with our joint funds. I was furious but mostly hurt. How could she do this to me, to us? I thought we were solid. I thought we had a future together. Turns out she was just using me as a cover while she was out screwing Mark and living her best life on my dime. The worst part, she kept lying. When I confronted her, Lisa looked me dead in the eyes and denied everything. Said I was paranoid, that I was imagining things. She called me crazy, jealous, and possessive. She said she loved me but she needed her freedom, that I was just insecure, but I could see through her lies. The way she avoided eye contact, how she'd stumble over her words, how she'd get defensive when I pressed her about her whereabouts. That night after she went to bed, I stayed up and stared at the pile of evidence I'd collected. My mind was racing. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry all at once. How could she do this? How could she betray me, steal from us, and then lie to my face? I thought about everything we built, from our first date to the house we bought to the little dreams I thought we shared. And now all of that felt like it was crumbling. I knew I couldn't just let this go. I had to do something. I wasn't sure what yet, but I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. The woman I married had turned into a stranger, someone who lied, cheated, and stole. I was hurt, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I'd find out the truth, confront her properly, and then decide what to do. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me or take everything I'd worked for. This was just the beginning of a long, messy fight, and I was ready to face it head on. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My head was pounding and the weight of everything hit me anew. I kept replaying the night's discoveries, the texts, the bank statements, the hotel receipts, and a surge of rage started to boil inside me. I couldn't believe she'd been lying to me for months, maybe longer. That she'd been sneaking around with her boss, Mark, while I was at work or sleeping next to her in bed. It was like my entire world had flipped upside down overnight. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I needed some solid evidence first. I couldn't just accuse her blindly. So I spent the morning gathering everything I had, screenshots of her texts, bank statements, emails, making sure I had a record of everything. I also took some photos of her phone, the hotel receipts, and the bank transfers. I wanted to be prepared for the inevitable showdown. When she finally woke up, I could see the nervousness in her eyes. She must have sensed something was off, even if she didn't know what. I sat her down at the kitchen table, my hands trembling a little, and laid everything out on the table. I showed her the bank statements, the messages, the receipts. Her face went pale and her eyes flicked around nervously. "You've been lying to me," I said, my voice low but steady. "All these months, Lisa. The money you took, the affair, you've been screwing Mark, haven't you?" She looked at me, her lips trembling. "It's not what you think," she said, trying to sound calm. "It's just a misunderstanding. Mark and I..." "Stop lying," I cut her off. "I have proof. I know about everything. The money, the texts, the hotel stays. How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, then finally burst out, "It's been a few months. I didn't mean for it to get this far. Mark's just, he's different. He makes me feel alive. And the money, I needed it to keep us afloat, to get us out of debt. You don't understand how stressed I've been." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was spinning some bullshit about stress and needing to feel alive. Meanwhile, she was out screwing her boss, stealing our savings, and lying to my face. It was like a punch to the gut every time she opened her mouth. I felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and betrayal that I didn't even know how to process. I asked her how she could justify stealing from us, from everything we built. She shrugged and said, "I was desperate. You were never around. I needed something for myself, and Mark made me feel special. I thought you'd understand someday." Understand? I wanted to scream. How could I understand when she was out screwing someone else, taking our money and lying through her teeth? I'd always been the one working hard, paying the bills, trying to give us a decent life. And she was out there living a double life, pretending everything was fine. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, trying to figure out what to do next. I knew I couldn't stay married to her anymore, not after all this. But I also knew I had to think carefully about how to handle the fallout. I couldn't just walk away without a fight, especially with that much money involved. We had a house, shared assets, and now, mountain of lies. I was angry, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I had to protect what was mine and make her pay for what she'd done. I started making calls, lawyers, financial advisors, anyone who could help me understand my options. I learned that she was trying to claim half of our house in a divorce, even though she'd been unfaithful and stealing from us. I knew I had to fight her on that. I wasn't about to let her walk away with a penny more than she deserved. If anything, she owed me for all the damage she'd caused. In the meantime, I started documenting everything: her bank accounts, her phone, her emails. I needed proof to back up my claims. The more I looked into it, the angrier I got. She lied to me, betrayed me, and now she was trying to spin it all into some kind of victim story. I wasn't going to let her do that. I was furious, but I also knew I had to stay calm if I wanted to win this legal battle. Every time I thought about her lying there, pretending everything was fine while she was screwing her boss and stealing from us, I felt a deep, burning sense of betrayal. I'd given her everything: my love, my trust, my hard-earned money, and she'd thrown it all away for some affair and a quick cash grab. That's when I realized I had to fight back, not just for the money or the house, but for my dignity. I wasn't going to let her destroy me. If anything, this was the wake-up call I needed to finally stand up and take control of my life again. After I gathered all the evidence and confronted Lisa that morning, things only got worse. She started crying, saying she was sorry, claiming she was under so much stress and that Mark made her feel alive again. She begged me to understand, to forgive her, to give her a second chance. I looked at her and felt a cold fury rising inside me. Sorry didn't cut it. Not anymore. I told her I needed time to think, but in my mind, I already knew I was done. That evening, I decided I couldn't just sit around waiting for her to spin more lies or try to manipulate her way out of it. I needed a plan. A way to protect myself legally and financially. I contacted a divorce lawyer I found online, someone who specialized in high net worth cases and infidelity. The guy was blunt and told me the truth. With the amount of money stolen in her affair, I had a strong case to fight for the house and assets. But I had to act fast, gather every piece of proof, and be prepared for a nasty legal fight. Meanwhile, Lisa kept insisting she was innocent, that I was overreacting, and that she'd never do anything to hurt me. She kept crying, saying she loved me, that she'd change, that she'd stop seeing Mark. But I didn't believe her, not anymore. I knew her game. She was trying to manipulate me, to guilt me into staying silent while she spun her lies. I refused to fall for it. I told her I'd be talking to my lawyer and that she should prepare for the worst. Over the next few days, I started digging into her financial history more deeply. I hired a private investigator to see if I could find out more about her dealings with Mark. Turns out, she'd been funneling money into secret accounts, probably to hide her assets. I also discovered she'd been making large cash withdrawals, some in small amounts, to avoid detection. She'd gone to great lengths to cover her tracks, but I had enough evidence now to prove she'd been actively hiding assets and stealing from us. One night, I found her on her phone again, texting Mark. I snuck into the living room and saw a message where she told him she was afraid she'd get caught but couldn't stop thinking about him. That was the final straw. I took screenshots, saved everything, and knew I had what I needed to push forward legally. I couldn't let her continue this charade. She was trying to convince me to stay, to reconcile, but I knew better. She'd betrayed me, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The next step was to prepare for a confrontation, an official separation. I told her I was filing for divorce and that I wanted full custody of our joint assets. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. The money, the house, her lies, they all added up to a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I also made it clear that I intended to fight for what was mine, including the house, and that I would be seeking damages for the money she stole and the emotional distress she caused. Honestly, I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Part of me was numb, like I'd been punched in the gut so many times I couldn't feel anything anymore. But another part of me was determined. I was done being the victim. I was going to take back control, expose her for what she really was, and make her pay for what she'd done. I knew this was going to be a long, messy ride, but I was ready for the fight. I wasn't going to let her walk away with my house, my savings, or my dignity. In the days that followed, I kept compiling evidence, talking to lawyers, and planning my next moves. I knew she'd try to spin her version of events, paint herself as the victim, and make me look like the bad guy. But I had the proof, and I was determined to stand my ground. Every time I thought about her cheating and stealing from us, I felt that familiar surge of rage. It fueled me. I wasn't going to let her destroy everything we had built, not without a fight. Now I just had to wait for her to realize she couldn't lie her way out of this, and when she did, I'd be ready. I knew I had to be smart, patient, and relentless if I wanted to win this war, because this wasn't just about money or a house anymore. It was about justice, and I was done being the victim. The days dragged on, and Lisa's behavior only grew more frantic. She started acting even more bitchy, snapping at me over nothing, trying to guilt-trip me with tears and fake apologies. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I saw through her act. Every word, every sob was just another attempt to manipulate me into backing down or softening her blow. The thing is, I knew her tricks now. I'd done my homework, and I had enough evidence to bury her legally if it came to that. One evening, she stormed into the kitchen, voice trembling with anger, and started accusing me of destroying our family, claiming I was just trying to ruin her reputation. She insisted she loved me, that Mark was just a fling, that she'd never steal from us. Yet I had bank statements showing she withdrew hundreds of thousands in cash, and messages where she told Mark she was ready to leave me. I told her I didn't believe her lies anymore, that her love was just a scam, and I had all the proof I needed. She then doubled down on her lies, claiming she was suffering and didn't know how to fix this. But I saw her for what she was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd lied, cheated, and stolen her way through our marriage. I told her I was filing for divorce, that I was going to fight for every penny and every piece of property she thought she could claim. Her face twisted into a mixture of rage and despair, but deep down, I knew she understood she'd pushed me too far. In the midst of all this, I made some calls to a forensic accountant and a lawyer specializing in property disputes. The accountant confirmed that she'd been funneling money into accounts in her name, hiding assets, and that her claims to half the house were more than likely invalid given her actions. The lawyer explained that I had a strong case to fight her for the house, especially since she'd been caught red-handed stealing and lying. Meanwhile, Lisa's attempts to spin this into some misunderstanding or mistake only fueled my resolve. She kept insisting she was sorry, that she'd do anything to make it right, but I knew better. Sorry doesn't erase $250, $0 stolen, or months of lies and betrayal. Sorry doesn't undo the fact that she'd been screwing her boss and living a double life. I had to be strategic. I started drafting a legal plan to protect my assets and to ensure she wouldn't get her hands on more than she deserved. One night, I found her trying to delete some messages from her phone, probably trying to hide more proof. I confronted her, and she broke down entirely, sobbing and begging me to forgive her, saying she was weak, that she made a huge mistake. I looked at her, feeling a mix of disgust and pity. I told her I wasn't interested in her apologies anymore. I'd already made up my mind. This was over. I also contacted the bank to freeze any suspicious accounts she might have set up, and I started working on a timeline of all her financial transactions. It was clear she'd gone to great lengths to cover her tracks, but I was determined to uncover everything. I knew this wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about justice, about making her pay for the betrayal she'd inflicted on me and our marriage. Deep down, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was like a huge weight had been lifted once I started fighting back. I realized I'd been a fool for so long thinking everything was fine, but now I was finally taking control. I'd fight for the house, for my savings, and for my dignity, and I would make sure she paid for her lies and her betrayal. The legal battle was about to begin, and I knew it would be ugly, but I was ready. I didn't care about her sob stories or her fake remorse. I knew the truth, and I had all the proof I needed. From here on out, it was me against her, and I wasn't going to lose. Not again, not after everything she'd done. This was the start of my revenge, and I was going to see it through. The legal process moved quickly once I handed over all the evidence I had collected. My lawyer was sharp and ruthless, and I could tell he'd seen cases like this before. We filed for divorce, and I made sure to include claims for the money she'd stolen, the house, and damages for emotional distress. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't going to let her walk away with a dime more than she deserved. Lisa, of course, didn't take it well. She started playing the victim, crying about how heartbroken she was, how she'd made mistakes but still loved me. She insisted she'd never do anything to hurt me, and that Mark was just a mistake, a moment of weakness she'd regret forever. Yeah, right, I saw through her crocodile tears. She was just trying to manipulate her way out of it, to turn my anger into guilt. But I wasn't buying it. I knew her game now. In the meantime, I made sure to dig even deeper into her finances. I hired a private investigator to look into her secret accounts, and it turned out she'd been funneling money into offshore accounts in the Caribbean. She'd been planning to hide assets and probably wanted to disappear with her lover and the money. I was furious. I had enough to prove she'd been actively attempting to defraud me and hide her assets. That's when I realized she didn't just cheat. She was trying to cheat the system, to walk away with everything while I got nothing. Her attempts to claim half the house were quickly shot down after my lawyer submitted all the evidence of her theft and infidelity. The judge wasn't stupid. He saw the pattern of lies, the bank transfers, the hotel receipts, and the messages. It was clear she'd been living a double life, screwing her boss, stealing from us, and trying to cover her tracks. The court was starting to see her for what she was, a manipulative, dishonest woman who'd betrayed everything we built. Lisa's desperation grew as the case moved forward. She started showing up at my house unannounced, crying, begging me to call it off, promising she'd change and that she loved me more than anything. But I wasn't swayed. I told her I'd heard enough lies and I was done. I explained that her actions had destroyed any trust I had left, and that I was fighting to protect what was rightfully mine. I also made it clear that if she kept trying to manipulate or threaten me, I'd take it to court and get a restraining order if necessary. One night, she got into a huge fight with me, claiming she was the victim, that I'd ruined her life, and that I should just forgive her and move on. I told her straight up that forgiveness wasn't an option anymore. Not after she'd stolen $250,000, cheated on me, and lied to my face for months. I told her she made her bed, and now she'd have to face the consequences. That was the moment I realized I was finally done with her lies. I'd fought enough, and I was ready to see this through to the end. The court hearings were tense, and Lisa's attorney tried every trick in the book to spin her story. But it was useless. The evidence was overwhelming. I had bank statements, message logs, hotel receipts, and witness statements from the private investigator. The judge saw through her lies, and I could tell he was annoyed with her attempts to manipulate the situation. In the end, the court ruled in my favor for the house, the money she'd stolen, and a substantial amount of damages for her emotional cheating and betrayal. The final blow was when Lisa was ordered to pay back every cent she took from us, plus interest. She was furious, crying and screaming about how unfair it all was, but I didn't care. I felt a strange sense of victory. I'd fought for what was mine, exposed her lies, and made her pay for her betrayal. The house was mine again, and I was finally free from her web of lies. Looking back, I realize how much I've learned from this nightmare. Never ignore the signs, never trust blindly, and always protect yourself legally. Lisa thought she could get away with everything, screwing her boss, stealing our money, and lying to my face. But I stood my ground, fought back, and proved that betrayal doesn't pay. I was broken, yes, but I'm stronger now, and I'll never let someone do that to me again. If you're reading this and facing something similar, just remember, do. Be afraid to fight for yourself. Because at the end of the day, nobody's coming to save you, you've got to do it yourself. The aftermath of everything has been a whirlwind I never expected to face. After the court's final ruling, Lisa was ordered to pay back every dollar she took, plus interest, and she had no choice but to accept it. Her face was a mask of anger and frustration, but honestly, I didn't care. The house was mine again, and I finally felt like I was breathing freely for the first time in months. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but I knew I'd come out stronger. I had fought for my dignity, my property, and most importantly, my peace of mind. Living through this ordeal changed me. I've become more cautious, more guarded, but also more aware of the importance of protecting myself, financially and emotionally. I learned that trusting blindly is a mistake, and that sometimes the people you love the most can turn out to be your biggest enemies. I also realized how crucial it is to document everything, to stay one step ahead, and to never underestimate the extent of someone's deception when they're desperate to hide their tracks. Lisa's life, of course, took a nosedive after the court's decision. She tried to spin it as unfair, claiming she was the victim, but the evidence was too strong. Her reputation took a hit, and her career suffered as more of her lies came to light. As for me, I've been rebuilding slowly, painfully, but steadily. I've started focusing on my own happiness again, reconnecting with friends and investing in myself. It's not easy, but I know I'll be okay. Looking back, I can honestly say that I don't regret fighting. Yes, it was exhausting, emotionally draining, and at times humiliating. But standing up for myself was the right choice. I refused to be a victim of someone's betrayal. I refused to let her steal my future along with my money. I've learned a hard lesson about trust, about the importance of being vigilant, and about how resilience can come from even the darkest moments. If anyone ever finds themselves in a similar situation, my advice is simple. Gather your evidence, stay calm, and fight for what's yours. Don't let anyone, no matter how close, take advantage of your trust or your hard work. Stand your ground, be relentless, and never let betrayal define you. I may have been broken for a while, but I'm stronger now, and I know that I'll never let anyone do this to me again. That's the real victory.